Welcome to the Invite Health podcast, where our degreed healthcare professionals are excited to offer you the most important health and wellness information you need to make informed choices about your health. You can learn more about the products discussed in each of these episodes and all that Invite Health has to offer at www.invitehealth.com/podcast. First-time customers can use promo code podcast at checkout for an additional 15% off your first purchase. Let's get started.
Have you ever thought about if your jeans are making you feel abnormal? And I'm not talking about the jeans that you wear on a regular basis as part of your wardrobe. I am talking about our genetic makeup. Is it possible that our genes are disrupting our mental well-being? Yes, the answer is definitely yes. And I want to talk today about MTHFR and COMT. Now, I'm going to get into the heavy science on this topic, but it's really quite common, and it's amazing how many people can have this type of a gene mutation or a genetic variant to one or to both of those specific genes that can really impact your overall sense of well-being. So I'm going to get into all of that today. I am Amanda Williams, MD, MPH, and I want to discuss the impact that a gene variant can have on how we feel every single day. Do you feel anxious? Are you feeling like you have low mood? There are so many different ways in which our genes, if they are not working properly, can really make a huge difference in terms of our day-to-day functioning. So let's talk a little bit about MTHFR and COMT. Now, these are both shortened names for the specific genes that we are going to be discussing today. So we talk about MTHFR, we are looking at the specific gene that is actually providing the instruction for your body in order to make the MTHFR protein, which helps the body with processing folate. And we know that we need to have folate in order to make DNA. So everything is interconnected when we look at that cellular level, when we look at our genetics. Now, each person has two copies of the MTHFR gene. One comes from your mother, one comes from your father. And we know that if we have any type of a variant in this, so if we have a mismatching per se of those genes that we receive from our parents, this can actually make a really significant impact on how the body is actually detoxifying. And if we become overly toxic, of course, this can impact our overall sense of well-being. So this is why this is very important. So what in the world is MTHFR? Well, MTHFR is methyl tetrahydrofolate reductase, and this is this very key and important enzyme when it comes to folate, which is a key B vitamin, the metabolism of folate. And we have to have MTHFR in order to have this proper conversion. And so this can impact not only our overall mental sense of well-being, but also when we look at cardiovascular, because we know homocysteine plays a significant role in this as well. And homocysteine is an enzyme that can be indicative of vascular inflammation. So we know that MTHFR plays this really significant role in our overall wellness, but we also have to look and see how much of an impact does a gene variant within MTHFR have an impact on our life. When we look at things such as anxiety, depression, we can look at major depressive disorders, schizophrenia, autism. There's so many different things across the spectrum that we know can be impacted via MTHFR. So this is why it is very beneficial to consider having your MTHFR test done. And this is a very simple test. It's a genetic test, and you just do a simple cheek swab, and then we get the results back, and you can see if you have one of these variants that you receive from your parents. And this can explain so much. There are so many people that I have worked with through the years who maybe suffer from issues such as bipolar disorder or depression or anxiety, and they don't recognize that they have the MTHFR mutation. And once you have that information, you're armed with that information. Now you can make adjustments to your dietary intake of things like B vitamins and recognize that taking a standard synthetic B vitamin really is not the best thing for you because your body has an inability to actually convert that into its bioactive form. So taking a biologically active B vitamin is what you would opt to do. So you could go to our website and you'll see that we offer Methyl B. All of our multivitamins also include activated B vitamins. So if you fall into that category of having an MTHFR mutation, it's really quite important that you make sure that you are taking the activated B vitamins. Synthetic vitamins, like what they fortify foods with, are not going to be able to be processed in your system efficiently and effectively, which means we can start to get this toxic buildup, which means our folate is not being processed properly, which means we can then have the issue with elevations in homocysteine, which is once again indicative of vascular inflammation. So we know all of these different things, and there's so much information that has come out ever since the DNA has become kind of front and center of scientific research. And in the Journal of Integrative Medicine, they were looking at anxiety and MTHFR mutations and how they could actually treat that with things such as methylated B vitamins, which is those activated B vitamins, along with SAMe. So we have to think about all of these things, and it's an easy thing for you to do. All you have to do is that simple cheek swab and it can let you know. And this can explain a lot as to how you have been maybe dealing with different stressors in your life, or if you always feel like you're on edge. This oftentimes can kind of give you that peace of mind. You say, okay, well, this is happening because of this genetic variant, and now I know more about this. Now I can make these modifications to really help to support my body much more efficiently. So this is one aspect. Now, the other thing that we always like to look at is COMT. Now, COMT, this particular gene, this plays a really important role in providing the instructions for making an enzyme known as catechol methyltransferase. So catechol methyltransferase is essential when we look at the nerve cells in the brain, and it plays an integral role in terms of the proper functionality within the cortex of the brain and signaling different neurotransmitters. We're looking at things like dopamine and norepinephrine. And if we have a gene mutation within COMT, this can have an impact on those particular neurotransmitters, which once again can lead to issues such as feeling very edgy or anxious or depressed. So this is why looking at these things can give you a lot of insight. We know foods matter, and we know that having healthy foods and adhering to a Mediterranean diet is very beneficial for our overall mental well-being as well as everything else within the body. But if we have a gene mutation within COMT, we need to be aware of this because there are things, once again, that we can be looking at and assessing. We can look and see if things such as green tea or vitamin C and magnesium, if these would be beneficial in order for those neurotransmitters to be more properly regulated. So all of this is very complex scientific information, but at the end of the day, we have to know more about this. And now that we can do simple gene testing to give us this information, then we should be doing that when we look at all of the different toxins that can build up in the human body, coming from things such as air pollution, coming from pesticides, coming from hormonal byproducts that break down in the body, and our stress hormones, cortisol, for example. We have to be able to get rid of these byproducts and all of this toxic waste. It is nearly impossible to be able to do that efficiently if we have a defect within MTHFR or within COMT. And in some cases, people will have both. They have both a COMT variant as well as an MTHFR variant. So this is very, very important. We know the effects of COMT and the impact that that has on our hormones and how it is really having a full-fledged effect on stress and our reaction to stress. So when we think about health, we think about our well-being, we have to be cognizant that there are sometimes things that went awry in the manufacturing of us as human beings. And if we have one of these variants, or as they used to call it, a mutation, but people don't like to be thought of as having this mutation, but that's what it is. It's a genetic mismatch or a mispairing that we get passed down from our parents. And so if we have a COMT issue, we once again are now impacting the way that the body goes through the stage of methylation, which is that cleaning up of all of those toxins. We know that B vitamins are integral to this, which kind of takes us back to that MTHFR. If we have an MTHFR issue and the body is not doing well with those synthetic forms of B vitamin, then we have to make sure we are taking the activated B vitamins. We have to make sure we have adequate magnesium. We know that a good 50%, if not higher, of Americans have a magnesium deficiency. So we know all of these things. We know that the body requires these. And if we then make that situation more complex by having a genetic variant within either one of those genes, now we are really setting ourselves up for significant issues when we think about feeling anxious, when we think about feeling stressed out, when we think about having low energy or depression. This is really just some fascinating information. I remember when this test first came out and I was highly interested in it because there are so many people who deal with anxiety and depression on a regular basis. I mean, you don't have to look too far as to even looking at the amount of prescriptions that are written in this country every year for anxiolytic drugs, anti-anxiety drugs, as well as antidepressants. So we know that there is something going on, but have they looked far enough into it to say this isn't just some type of an environmental reason as to why someone has low mood or stress or anxiety, but it actually comes down to a genetic mutation? And so now that we can look at this, it really is so amazing. And we can see how different nutrients can be beneficial. Say if someone does have a genetic variant within either one of those genes, things such as cruciferous vegetables that we can take in from our diet, or if we're taking it in supplementation wise using indole 3-carbinol and DIM, having omega-3 fatty acids such as flaxseed, fish oil, how beneficial those can be, using very powerful antioxidants, these different phytonutrients that can really help the body enhance the way that we react to these gene mutations. And looking at things, as I mentioned, green tea can be very beneficial. The EGCG, those powerful catechins that are contained within green tea, can do so much when we look at enhancing that COMT pathway. So we know all of these different things now. So what do we do about it? Well, the first thing is we have the gene test done. We do the simple cheek swab. We look and we see, okay, is our COMT pathway looking nice and clear? Does that mean that our neurotransmitters, such as dopamine, is working appropriately? Are we having an issue with the way that our body is processing folate? If so, to what degree? Is this now putting us at a greater risk for cardiovascular issues because maybe now homocysteine levels are elevated because traditional folate does not work well in the body? So these are the things that we need to know, because then you can make those adjustments. We can look at methyl B and we can take those activated B vitamins. We can add in those powerful phytonutrients and magnesium and omega-3s. All of these things can really make a huge, huge difference. There is so much research out there in the Journal of Translational Psychiatry. They were looking at the connection between MTHFR mutation and different psychiatric diseases. So we know that there is this correlation, and it is something that now that we have much more information and have a greater grasp on how these genes are controlling our overall sense of well-being. And if we are not able to properly detoxify and we are not able to have neurotransmitters released in an appropriate fashion, how is that impacting us? And if we know this, what can we then do about it? And now we know there are many things that we can be doing. So I definitely encourage you to go to our website, invitehealth.com, and check out our MTHFR COMT genetic test. It's our mood panel, and it can really give you so much insight if this is something that you've been dealing with for a while. Maybe you feel like, yes, I'm always anxious, but that's just kind of how I am. Well, maybe you will know more about how to manage that if we find out that there is indeed a genetic variant that is causing all of this. So certainly go to the website, check it out. If you have questions, remember we have all of our health experts that are on hand to help you navigate this very complex process. But I just want you to the more you know, the more you can be proactive. And that's always my key point is you're better to be proactive rather than to be reactive. So don't wait until the point where you succumb to significant depression or you're having severe anxiety on a regular basis. If you know more, then you can do something about it. So I want to thank you so much for tuning in to the Invite Health podcast. Remember, you can find all of our episodes for free wherever you listen to podcasts or by visiting invitehealth.com/podcast. Do make sure that you subscribe and leave us a review. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Invite Health. And we will see you next time for another episode of the Invite Health podcast.